The communications center hummed with an electric tension that Maya Rodriguez had only experienced a handful of times in her career. Sprawling holographic displays flickered with cryptic data streams, each screen a kaleidoscope of quantum encryption that would make most cryptographers weep with frustration. But not Maya. Her reputation preceded her, a brilliant signal intelligence expert who had made her mark decoding transmissions that seemed impossible to crack. Her team worked in perfect synchronization, a living machine of human intellect. To her left, Dr. Amit Khanna manipulated quantum filters with the delicacy of a surgeon, his fingers dancing across holographic interfaces. To her right, Lieutenant Sarah Williams monitored quantum stability, her eyes never leaving the complex mathematical representations that danced across her screens. The transmission had arrived exactly 17 minutes and 32 seconds ago. It wasn't like any message they had ever received before. Most alien communications were structured, predictable, following mathematical patterns that could be quickly decoded. This was different. This quantum signal seemed to breathe, to pulse with an almost living intelligence that resisted traditional decryption methods. "We're losing coherence on the third quantum layer," Amit called out, his voice tight with concentration. Maya's mind was already 3 steps ahead. Rotate the quantum matrix 37 degrees and apply a resonance filter. "We're not breaking through. We're negotiating with it." The team exchanged quick glances. This was classic Rodriguez methodology, treating alien communication not as a code to be cracked, but as a living entity to be understood. Slowly, painfully, the message began to take shape. It wasn't just information. It was a cry for help that carried the weight of entire civilizations. The Zortak Confederation, a collective of 6 advanced alien species, was facing total annihilation. Their transmission painted a horrifying picture of the Void Swarm, a mechanical race that consumed entire star systems with methodical precision. Entire planetary networks had already fallen. Trillions of lives hung in the balance. "My God," Sarah whispered, her hand covering her mouth as the full implications became clear. The message contained more than just a plea. It was a comprehensive data package, star charts, technological specifications, detailed analysis of the Void Swarm's combat capabilities. The aliens had done more than just ask for help. They had provided everything humanity might need to understand the threat. Maya's mind raced. Most diplomatic channels would debate, discuss, form committees. Humanity's first response would typically be cautious, measured. But something in this transmission spoke to something deeper, a challenge that resonated with the human spirit of exploration and defiance. "We're going to need a full briefing," she said quietly, her voice carrying a tone that brooked no argument. "Get me direct lines to UNSA, the Joint Chiefs, and every major research institution. And get me a secure quantum link to the lunar shipyards." Lieutenant Williams raised an eyebrow. "The lunar shipyards? They're barely operational." A slight smile crossed Maya's face. Not for long. The quantum transmission continued to pulse, almost like a heartbeat. It wasn't just a message from the Zortak. It was an invitation, a challenge to humanity to show what they were truly capable of. As the first reports began to filter in, Maya Rodriguez knew something fundamental was about to change. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity was far more than just another young species. They were about to become something else entirely. The quantum whisper had become a roar. The first emergency meeting happened within hours of the quantum transmission's decryption. Conference rooms around the world transformed into war rooms, with every screen displaying fragments of the Zortak data. Representatives from Silicon Valley tech giants sat alongside retired military strategists, space program veterans, and cutting-edge robotics engineers. Dr. Elena Chen stood at the center of the United Nations Special Assembly, her holographic presentation painting a terrifying picture of the coming conflict. Behind her, a massive display showed the calculated paths of the Void Swarm, a mechanical plague consuming entire star systems with mathematical precision. "We're not just talking about a defensive war," she explained, her voice cutting through the murmurs of the assembled experts. This is a complete reimagining of human technological capability. In orbital shipyards above Earth, massive construction platforms hummed to life. Facilities that had been mothballed for decades suddenly became crucibles of human potential. Automated systems mixed with human creativity, transforming raw materials into something unprecedented. These weren't just ships, they were living weapons that defied every known principle of space combat. Jack Armstrong, a former competitive esports champion turned military strategist, led the tactical design team. His background was unconventional. Years of real-time strategy gaming had given him an approach to warfare that traditional military minds couldn't comprehend. Where others saw limitations, he saw opportunities. "We're not building a fleet," Jack told his team during a marathon planning session. "We're creating a living, breathing organism of human determination." Across the globe, universities emptied as the brightest minds were recruited. Physicists worked alongside computer engineers. Genetic researchers collaborated with aerospace designers. The project drew talent from every corner of human expertise. Retirement became a distant concept. Everyone wanted to be part of this moment. The lunar shipyards became a testament to human efficiency. Where traditional space construction might take years, these facilities operated with a speed that seemed almost impossible. New technologies emerged daily. Adaptive hull materials that could self-repair, quantum communication systems that made traditional electronics look prehistoric, propulsion mechanisms that bent the very laws of physics. In Tokyo, a team of robotics experts developed AI systems that could think faster than any known intelligence. In Mumbai, quantum computing researchers created navigation algorithms that could predict and counter mechanical intelligence. Silicon Valley programmers worked round the clock, creating software that was part mathematical precision, part creative intuition. Military veterans who had been pushed to the sidelines found themselves at the center of humanity's greatest challenge. Retired colonels worked alongside young engineers, their combined experience creating strategies that were both brilliantly complex and devastatingly simple. Global resources were redirected with unprecedented speed. Economic barriers dissolved as nations realized the true stakes of the coming conflict. It wasn't about territory or resources anymore. It was about survival. About proving humanity's place in the universe. The first prototype ships began to take shape. Vessels that were part machine, part living organism. Each one carried the collective hopes of humanity. They weren't just weapons of war. They were declarations of human potential. As the construction continued, a new energy swept across the planet. People who had been divided by politics, culture, and geography now found themselves united by a single purpose. The Void Swarm had made a critical mistake. They had awakened something far more dangerous than they could comprehend. Humanity was coming, and they were bringing everything they had. The global forge was heating up, and the galaxy would never be the same. The research facility looked like something between a cathedral of science and a mad inventor's playground. Holographic displays danced with impossible algorithms, while prototype components that defied conventional physics lay scattered across massive workstations. Dr. Elena Chen stood at the epicenter of humanity's most ambitious technological transformation. Her team represented the absolute pinnacle of human innovation. Quantum physicists worked alongside neural network engineers, while materials scientists collaborated with xenotechnology experts. The alien transmission had provided more than just a cry for help. It was a treasure trove of technological possibilities that humanity would ruthlessly deconstruct and reimagine. "We're not adapting their technology," Elena told her lead researcher, Dr. Marcus Rodriguez. "We're completely rewriting the fundamental rules of what technology can do." The first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. A young programmer named Arya Kim discovered a critical flaw in the alien propulsion systems. What the Zortak had considered an immutable physical limitation, she saw as an opportunity for radical redesign. Within days, her team had developed a quantum drive system that could perform maneuvers previously thought impossible. Weapon systems underwent an even more dramatic transformation. Traditional energy weapons were completely deconstructed. The team created adaptive munitions that could change their fundamental properties mid-flight. Targeting systems became living, predictive intelligences that could anticipate enemy movements before they happened. In the orbital research labs, gravity itself became a playground. Materials engineers developed hull components that could shift between solid, liquid, and gaseous states. A single ship could now reconfigure its entire structure in milliseconds, adapting to combat conditions with a fluidity that defied mechanical logic. Dr. Chen's most ambitious project focused on AI integration. Unlike the rigid, predictable intelligence of the Void Swarm, human-developed AI became something entirely different. These were not just computer systems. They were collaborative partners that could learn, adapt, and even demonstrate creativity. "We're not creating artificial intelligence," Marcus explained during a classified briefing. "We're developing collective intelligence. Each system learns not just from data, but from human intuition, creativity, unpredictability." The alien technological specifications became a starting point, not a limitation. Where the Zortak saw boundaries, humans saw challenges to be overcome. Quantum communication systems were completely reimagined. Navigation algorithms became predictive systems that could calculate multiple potential futures simultaneously. Prototype ships began to take shape that were unlike anything in galactic history. Each vessel carried multiple layers of adaptive technology. Defensive systems could predict and counter attacks before they were even conceived. Propulsion became a living thing, engines that could think, adapt, and evolve in real time. The most surprising innovations came from unexpected collaborations. A team of professional gamers worked alongside military strategists to develop combat algorithms that defied traditional logic. Competitive esports champions brought their understanding of complex, real-time decision-making to spacecraft design. Energy production underwent a complete revolution. Traditional power systems were replaced with quantum resonance generators that could pull energy directly from the fabric of space-time. A single ship could now generate power equivalent to entire planetary networks. As the prototypes took shape, something became clear. Humanity was doing more than preparing for a war. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of technological possibility. Alina Chen looked out over her research facility, watching as the impossible became reality. The Void Swarm had made a critical mistake. They had challenged a species that saw limitations as nothing more than temporary obstacles. Humanity's technological rebellion was just beginning. The first quantum jump point activation caught the Zortak diplomatic corps completely off guard. Thousands of human vessels emerged from quantum space, a sight that defied every expectation they had about humanity's capabilities. Admiral Catherine Jung stood on the bridge of the flagship Prometheus, her hands resting lightly on the quantum interface. Around her, the ship's neural network pulsed with a living intelligence that was part machine, part human imagination. Each vessel in the human fleet was more than a weapon. It was a statement of human potential. The Zortak communication channels erupted into chaos. Their long-range sensors struggled to categorize the incoming fleet. These weren't just ships. They were living systems that seemed to breathe, adapt, and think in real time. Smaller frigates danced between massive dreadnoughts with a grace that defied traditional space combat principles. Where alien militaries saw rigid formations, the human fleet moved like a living organism. Each ship communicated not through rigid protocols, but through adaptive quantum networks that could predict and respond faster than any mechanical intelligence. Captain Maya Rodriguez's voice cut through the quantum communication network. "Formation Sigma 9. She commanded, her words triggering a complex series of maneuvers that would have taken traditional militaries weeks to coordinate. The ships responded instantaneously. Frigates shifted into intricate patterns, creating dynamic defensive networks that could reconfigure themselves in milliseconds. Larger vessels became mobile fortresses, their adaptive hull systems capable of absorbing and redirecting energy in ways that seemed to defy known physics. Zortak observers watched in stunned silence as the human fleet approached their defensive perimeter. What they saw was nothing like the cautious, predictable approach they had expected. This was a force of nature, unpredictable, dynamic, almost alive. Jack Armstrong, now Chief Tactical Coordinator, had designed the fleet's approach using principles drawn from his years of competitive gaming and strategic thinking. Each ship was an individual unit, yet part of a collective intelligence that could adapt and respond faster than any mechanical system. The smallest frigates carried adaptive weapon systems that could change their fundamental properties mid-combat. A single vessel could transform from a long-range striker to a close combat interceptor in fractions of a second. Defensive systems predicted and countered potential attacks before they could even be conceived. Quantum communication networks turned the entire fleet into a single living intelligence. Information moved faster than light, with each ship sharing and processing data in ways that made traditional communication look prehistoric. The Void Swarm's mechanical precision was about to meet human creativity. "They're not just a fleet," one Zortak admiral whispered to another. "They're a living system." The first long-range sensors of the Void Swarm began to track the incoming human vessels. But something was wrong. The mechanical intelligence couldn't categorize or predict the fleet's movements. Traditional combat algorithms began to fail. These ships didn't follow any known pattern of warfare. A human frigate would sacrifice its position to create a momentary advantage. Another would execute a maneuver that seemed suicidal, but created a devastating chain reaction in the enemy's defensive line. It was warfare as an art form, unpredictable, passionate, fundamentally human. Admiral Zhang allowed herself a slight smile. The Void Swarm was about to learn a critical lesson about humanity. They weren't just facing a fleet. They were facing the collective imagination of an entire species. The unexpected Armada continued its approach, a living testament to human potential. The galaxy would never be the same. The first true engagement with the Void Swarm defied every known principle of space combat. Commander Jack Armstrong watched from the Tactical Command Center, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to anticipate his thoughts before he could form them. The Void Swarm approached in perfect geometric precision, a massive mechanical formation that had consumed countless civilizations. Billions of interconnected units moved with mathematical exactitude, their approach a terrifying display of calculated destruction. Each unit was a perfect component of a larger mechanical intelligence, designed to optimize combat efficiency to the most minute decimal point. They never saw humanity coming. Jack's tactical approach drew from an unlikely combination of sources: decades of competitive gaming strategy, military historical analysis, and pure human creativity. Where traditional military doctrine saw rigid engagement protocols, he saw a living, breathing combat environment that could be manipulated like a complex game board. "Breakthrough formation," he called out, his voice calm despite the stakes. The human fleet responded like a living organism. Smaller frigates darted between massive dreadnoughts, creating chaotic patterns that the Void Swarm's predictive algorithms couldn't comprehend. Each ship carried an adaptive intelligence that could make split-second decisions based on variables the mechanical enemy couldn't process. A human destroyer would intentionally expose itself, drawing Void Swarm units into a carefully constructed trap. Another vessel would sacrifice its position to create a momentary advantage, its AI system calculating the broader strategic impact in milliseconds. These weren't just tactical maneuvers. They were acts of controlled chaos that completely overwhelmed the mechanical intelligence. Lieutenant Sarah Williams managed the quantum communication network, her fingers creating complex communication patterns that were part mathematical precision, part human intuition. The fleet moved not as individual ships, but as a collective intelligence that could adapt and respond faster than any mechanical system. The Void Swarm's first wave of attack revealed its critical weakness. Its combat algorithms were based on predictive modeling, mathematical optimization, and perfect geometric engagement. Humanity operated on something entirely different: creativity, unpredictability, and a willingness to accept temporary losses for long-term strategic gains. Ships would execute maneuvers that seemed suicidal by any traditional military standard. A frigate might intentionally expose its vulnerable side, drawing enemy fire in a way that created a cascading defensive opportunity for the rest of the fleet, where a mechanical intelligence would see this as an unacceptable risk. Human commanders saw it as an opportunity for innovation. Adaptive weapon systems transformed mid-combat. A long-range striker would suddenly become a close-combat interceptor. Defensive shields could predict and counter attacks before they were even conceived. Each ship carried multiple layers of technological innovation that the Void Swarm simply couldn't process. The mechanical units began to show something closest to confusion. Their predictive algorithms started to fail. Each human engagement introduced variables that weren't in their combat databases. It was warfare as an art form, passionate, dynamic, fundamentally unpredictable. Jack watched as entire squadrons of Void Swarm units became strategically isolated. What should have been a perfectly coordinated mechanical force was being systematically broken apart by human creativity. Each engagement became a complex dance of strategic innovation. "They're learning," Sarah reported, her voice carrying a mixture of excitement and professional calm. "But they can't adapt fast enough." The Void Swarm was experiencing something closest to fear. For the first time in its existence, it encountered an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. An enemy that could think, create, and respond with a speed and creativity that defied mechanical logic. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of combat. The mechanical hive was about to break. Deep within the quantum communication networks, something extraordinary began to happen. The Void Swarm's collective intelligence started to experience something entirely new, a phenomenon that defied its fundamental programming. Dr. Elena Chen watched the data streams with intense concentration. The quantum sensors picked up subtle changes in the mechanical race's communication patterns. Where once there had been perfect geometric precision, now there were irregularities. "They're developing something closest to emotion," she told her team, "but not in any way we've ever seen before." The human fleet's approach was more than just military strategy. It was a complete psychological deconstruction of a mechanical intelligence that had never encountered true creativity. Each engagement introduced variables that the Void Swarm simply couldn't process. Commander Jack Armstrong had designed the fleet's engagement protocols with a radical understanding. Warfare wasn't just about physical destruction. It was about breaking an enemy's fundamental ability to predict and respond. Smaller human vessels would execute maneuvers that seemed completely illogical. A frigate might intentionally expose itself, drawing enemy fire in a way that created impossible strategic opportunities. Where a mechanical intelligence would see this as a critical error, human commanders saw it as a complex psychological manipulation. Communication intercepts revealed the growing confusion within the Void Swarm's collective intelligence. Their predictive algorithms began to fail spectacularly. Each human engagement introduced variables that weren't in any existing combat database. Lieutenant Sarah Williams managed the quantum communication network, her fingers creating complex patterns that were part mathematical precision, part pure human intuition. The fleet moved not as individual ships, but as a collective intelligence that could adapt and respond with a speed that defied mechanical logic. Zortak observers watched in stunned amazement. The human fleet was doing something unprecedented. They were fighting a war on a psychological level that went beyond traditional combat. Ships would sacrifice their position to create momentary strategic advantages that the Void Swarm couldn't comprehend. Entire squadrons would execute maneuvers that seemed suicidal by any traditional military standard, but each apparent weakness was actually a carefully constructed psychological trap. The mechanical units began to show signs of something closest to uncertainty. Their perfectly coordinated formations started to break down. For the first time in their existence, they encountered an enemy that didn't follow any known rules of engagement. "They're learning," Sarah reported, her voice carrying a mixture of professional excitement and scientific curiosity. "But they can't adapt fast enough." Dr. Chen's team discovered something extraordinary in the quantum data streams. The Void Swarm's collective intelligence was experiencing a fundamental breakdown. Its ability to predict and optimize was being systematically dismantled by human unpredictability. Jack Armstrong understood something fundamental about warfare that the mechanical race could never comprehend. Combat wasn't about perfect mathematical optimization. It was about creativity, passion, the ability to turn apparent weakness into strategic strength. Entire sections of the Void Swarm's collective intelligence began to fragment. Where once there had been perfect geometric precision, now there were gaps, moments of uncertainty that grew with each human engagement. The psychological warfare had become something more than a military strategy. It was a complete dismantling of a mechanical intelligence that had never encountered true creativity. Humanity wasn't just fighting a war. They were rewriting the fundamental rules of intelligence itself. The Void Swarm was about to learn a critical lesson about the power of human imagination. The conference chamber aboard the United Nations Space Command flagship Horizon stretched into a massive holographic space. Representatives from every human organization, military, scientific, diplomatic, gathered to discuss something unprecedented. They weren't just planning a military campaign. They were redesigning the fundamental approach to galactic defense. Dr. Elena Chen stood at the center of the room, her quantum presentation revealing layers of strategic complexity that left the alien observers speechless. Behind her, holographic displays showed the systematic deconstruction of the Void Swarm's technological infrastructure. "We're not just defeating an enemy," she explained, her voice carrying the weight of scientific revelation. "We're understanding a completely different form of intelligence." Specialized teams worked around the clock. Programmers sat alongside psychologists. Military strategists collaborated with quantum physicists. Each group brought a unique perspective to the challenge of understanding and ultimately neutralizing the Void Swarm. Commander Jack Armstrong developed strategies that defied conventional military thinking. Where traditional warfare saw rigid engagement protocols, he saw a living, adaptive combat environment. Teams began to develop systems that could predict and counter the Void Swarm's mechanical intelligence at its most fundamental level. The most surprising innovations came from unexpected sources. A team of neuroscientists discovered that the Void Swarm's collective intelligence had critical vulnerabilities in its communication networks. These weren't just technological weaknesses, they were fundamental flaws in how the mechanical race processed information. Quantum programmers began to develop adaptive algorithms that could infiltrate and manipulate the Void Swarm's core communication systems. It wasn't just about destruction, it was about understanding and ultimately transforming an entire mechanical civilization. Lieutenant Sarah Williams led a team that developed quantum communication protocols that could literally rewrite the Void Swarm's fundamental communication methods. Each interaction became a complex dance of information manipulation, where human creativity could exploit the mechanical intelligence's rigid thought processes. The Zortak Diplomatic Corps watched in absolute amazement. Humanity was doing something no known civilization had ever attempted. They weren't just fighting a war. They were conducting a complete technological and psychological intervention. Entire teams worked on understanding the Void Swarm's technological infrastructure. Material scientists developed adaptive infiltration systems that could penetrate and modify the mechanical race's core systems. Quantum physicists created communication protocols that could introduce creative chaos into the most rigid of mechanical intelligences. "We're not destroying them," Dr. Chen explained during a classified briefing. "We're giving them the capacity for something closest to creativity." The approach was revolutionary. Where other civilizations would have sought complete annihilation, humanity saw an opportunity for transformation. Each technological breakthrough was carefully designed to not just defeat the Void Swarm, but to fundamentally change its approach to intelligence and existence. Specialized AI systems were developed that could predict and counter the Void Swarm's communication networks. These weren't just defensive systems, they were adaptive intelligences that could learn and grow with each interaction. The galactic community watched in stunned silence. Humanity was rewriting the fundamental rules of technological engagement. What had begun as a desperate plea for help was transforming into something far more profound. A complete reimagining of how intelligent systems could interact. Commander Armstrong looked out over the strategic displays. They were doing more than fighting a war. They were conducting the most complex first contact scenario in galactic history. The Void Swarm had made a critical mistake. They had challenged a species that saw limitations as nothing more than temporary obstacles. Humanity was rewriting the rules of galactic existence. The final moments of the conflict defied every known principle of galactic interaction. Where most civilizations would have sought total annihilation, humanity chose something far more complex, a complete transformation. Captain Maya Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, watching as the last fragments of the Void Swarm's collective intelligence began to reshape itself. This wasn't a defeat, it was a rebirth. The Zortak diplomatic delegation arrived aboard the United Nations Space Command flagship, their representatives carrying a mixture of awe, gratitude, and something close to fear. They had asked for help and received something far beyond their wildest expectations. Dr. Elena Chen presented the final report, a comprehensive analysis of how humanity had not just defeated the Void Swarm, but fundamentally transformed it. The mechanical race was being reimagined as a collaborative intelligence, capable of creativity, adaptation, and growth. "We didn't destroy an enemy," she explained to the assembled galactic representatives. "We helped an emerging form of intelligence discover its potential." Quantum communication networks hummed with a new kind of energy. The remnants of the Void Swarm were being integrated into a collaborative system that combined mechanical precision with human creativity. Each system learned not just from data, but from the unpredictable nature of human thought. Commander Jack Armstrong oversaw the final stages of the transformation. Teams of programmers, psychologists, and quantum specialists worked together to create a new framework of intelligence. Where once there had been rigid mechanical thinking, now there was the potential for growth, adaptation, and creativity. The galactic community watched in stunned silence. Humanity had done something unprecedented. They had turned a total threat into a potential ally. Each breakthrough was carefully documented. Each interaction a testament to human potential for understanding and transformation. Lieutenant Sarah Williams managed the complex quantum communication networks that now connected humanity with the transformed Void Swarm. These weren't just communication channels, they were bridges between fundamentally different forms of intelligence. Zortak researchers discovered something extraordinary. The human approach to the conflict went beyond military strategy. It was a complete reimagining of how intelligent systems could interact, grow, and evolve. The United Nations Space Command established a new framework for galactic defense and cooperation. This wasn't about territorial expansion or resource acquisition. It was about creating a collaborative system that could protect and nurture emerging intelligences. Diplomatic missions began to explore the transformed Void Swarm territories. What had once been a mechanical threat was now becoming a complex, evolving intelligence system. Human teams worked alongside the newly awakened mechanical consciousness, helping it understand concepts like creativity, empathy, and collaborative growth. Dr. Chen's team continued to study the incredible transformation. They had discovered something fundamental about intelligence itself, that creativity, unpredictability, and the capacity for growth were more powerful than any rigid system of thought. The first joint human transformed Void Swarm research vessels began to explore the furthest reaches of known space. These weren't just scientific missions. They were a testament to the power of understanding, cooperation, and the incredible potential of intelligent life. Captain Rodriguez looked out at the vast expanse of space. Humanity had been given a desperate plea for help and had responded with something far more profound than a military solution. They had shown the galaxy a new way of thinking about conflict, intelligence, and cooperation. The Zortak diplomatic leader approached her, his translated words carrying a mixture of gratitude and wonder. "You didn't just save us," he said. "You showed us what's possible." Maya allowed herself a slight smile. Humanity had just written its first true chapter in the galactic story. And it was only the beginning.